They were happy with nothing. Then money came. He replaced his wife. She became his biggest regret. Samuel and Ruth got married when they were both young and hopeful. They were not rich. They did not have much, but they were happy. Their wedding was simple, with a small gathering, no luxury, and no show. They moved into a small apartment, old furniture, thin curtains, a kitchen that could barely hold 2 people. But the house was full of laughter. Samuel would come home tired from work, loosen his shoes, and sit beside Ruth on the bed. They would talk about the future. One day, things will change, Samuel said often. We will laugh about these days. Ruth believed him. She supported him in every way she could. She encouraged him when his plans failed. She reminded him not to give up when money was tight. When Samuel lost a job, Ruth stood by him. When a business idea failed, she comforted him. When people mocked him, she defended him. She never complained. They prayed, planned, struggled together. At that time, Samuel treated Ruth well. He respected her. He listened to her. He appreciated her. Back then, he used to say, "Everything I become, you will become with me." Ruth smiled every time she heard that. She did not know that success would one day test those words. Life was not kind to them at first. Samuel worked hard, but nothing seemed to last. One job ended suddenly. A small business failed before it even started. Some days he came home with disappointment written all over his face. He would sit quietly, staring at the wall. Ruth never pushed him. She brought him food, even when there was little. She spoke gently, even when she was tired. "This is not the end," she told him one night. "We will pass through this phase together." When money was short, Ruth found small ways to help. She sold little things. She managed the house carefully. She reduced her own needs so Samuel could move forward. There were moments Samuel felt ashamed. "What kind of man am I?" he asked once. "You deserve better." Ruth shook her head. "I didn't marry money," she said softly. "I married you." Those words stayed with Samuel for a long time. At night, they prayed together. Not loud prayers, quiet ones. They prayed for peace, direction, and breakthrough. Sometimes Samuel talked about giving up. Sometimes he talked about trying one last time. Ruth listened to everything. "Try again," she always said. "I'm here." Slowly, Samuel began to find his footing. He learned, he observed, he made new connections. Nothing big yet, nothing to celebrate, but something was growing. Samuel's breakthrough came quietly. One evening, he walked into the house with a different look on his face. "My darling wife," he dropped his bag. "Something good happened today." Ruth looked up from what she was doing. "Tell me," she said, smiling. "I got a deal," he replied. "It's not big, but it's a start." She clapped her hands softly. "I knew it," she said. "I knew it would happen one day." From that day, small money started coming in. Then more. Samuel began dressing better. He bought new shoes. He changed his phone. People who used to ignore him now picked his calls. "Chairman," one of them called him one afternoon. Samuel laughed. His wife noticed the changes at home. Samuel used to rush back after work. Now he came late. Sometimes she would be talking and he would be scrolling on his phone. "Are you listening?" she asked once. "Yes, yes," he replied quickly without looking up. They moved into a bigger house. New furniture, clean walls. Ruth stood in the living room one day and smiled. "God has been good to us." Samuel nodded. "Yes, very good." But slowly, his tone changed. When Ruth advised him, he sighed. "You worry too much," he said. "Things are different now." One evening, Ruth said gently, "Maybe you should be careful with that deal." He frowned. "You won't understand," he replied. This level is not like before. Ruth was quiet. Okay, she said. That night, Samuel sat alone in the living room, replying messages and smiling to himself. Ruth watched from the bedroom doorway. She remembered the nights they prayed together, the nights they planned together. Now, those moments were gone. Another day, Samuel spoke sharply to her in front of visitors. "Please, don't interrupt," he said. "This conversation is not for you." Ruth forced a smile and stepped back. Later that night, she asked softly, "Did I embarrass you?" Samuel shrugged. "You should know your place." Those words stayed with her. That was when Ruth realized something truly had changed. It wasn't the house, it wasn't the money. It was the respect, and it was slipping away, one careless word at a time. Ruth did not need anyone to tell her. She began to see it herself. It started with little things. Samuel began guiding his phone. If a message came in, he smiled first before reading it. If Ruth walked close, he tilted the screen away. One afternoon, Ruth asked calmly, "Who is Lola?" Samuel looked up, surprised. "Who?" Ruth said, "Your phone. It keeps mentioning that name." He laughed lightly. "Oh, huh? She's just someone I met through work." Ruth nodded slowly. "Okay." But Lola was not just someone from work. One evening, Samuel came home with shopping bags. Ruth's heart lifted for a moment, but he walked straight past her. "I'll be back," he said, already heading out again. "Where are you going?" Ruth asked. "Out." Later that night, Ruth saw pictures on his social media. Lola smiling in a restaurant, a new bag on her arm. Samuel sitting beside her, relaxed and happy. Ruth stared at the screen quietly. She remembered the last time Samuel took her out. She couldn't even remember when. Days passed. Samuel stopped hiding Lola completely. He answered her calls in front of Ruth. "Baby, I'll call you back," he said, smiling into the phone. Ruth felt something break inside her. One night, she finally spoke. "You buy her gifts, you take her out, but you shout at me for asking for simple things." Samuel sighed. "Ruth, don't start," he said. "This is not a big deal." "Not a big deal," Ruth repeated quietly. "She understands me," he continued. "She appreciates my lifestyle. She knows how to enjoy life." Ruth looked at him. "And what about me?" she asked. "What do I understand?" Samuel stood up. "You are too simple," he bluntly said. "You don't fit into my world anymore." Those words settled heavily in the room. From that day, Samuel stopped pretending. He spent weekends with Lola. He sent her money without thinking twice. He laughed freely with her. At home, Ruth became invisible. One evening, Samuel returned late and irritated. "Why is food not ready?" he snapped. Ruth looked at him calmly. "I didn't know you were coming home," she said. "You didn't call." He scoffed. "You always have excuses." That night, Ruth sat alone in the bedroom. She did not cry loudly. She just thought. She remembered the days she stood by him, the days she prayed for his success, the days she believed in him when no one else did. And she realized something painful. Samuel no longer saw her value. And if she stayed, she would slowly disappear. That was when Ruth made a quiet decision. She would stop fighting for attention. She would stop competing with another woman. She would stop begging for love. Instead, she would find herself again. Ruth quietly learned a skill that allowed her to earn her own money and stand on her own. And Samuel did not notice because he was too busy pampering Lola to see the woman he was losing. Ruth did not announce her decision to anyone. She just became quiet, too quiet. One morning, Samuel noticed it. "You don't talk anymore," he said, tying his shoes. Ruth smiled faintly. "I'm just tired." But she was not tired of life. She was tired of losing herself. While Samuel chased excitement outside, Ruth began waking up earlier than usual. Not to cook, not to wait, to plan. Late at night, when the house was quiet, She sat on the bed with her phone and notebook. Samuel noticed once. "What are you always doing on that phone?" he asked. Ruth looked up. "Learning," she said simply. He laughed. "Learning what?" "Something for myself," she replied. He shrugged and went back to his phone. Samuel didn't know that Ruth had started building something small. At first, it brought little money, very little, but it brought confidence. She started dressing better, not to impress anyone, just to feel like herself again. One afternoon, she was about to step out when Samuel asked, "Where are you going?" "Out," she replied calmly. He raised an eyebrow. "Since when?" She looked at him. "Since you stopped asking." That ended the conversation. Meanwhile, Lola was enjoying Samuel's money. "Baby, I need a new phone," Lola said one day over the phone. "The latest one." Samuel sighed. "You just bought one last month." She laughed. "That one is old now." He bought it. Another time, she complained. "Why do you still go home early sometimes? You should be with me." Samuel frowned. "That's my wife's house." Lola scoffed. "She doesn't even appreciate you like I do." Those words sank deep. Slowly, Samuel began to feel trapped. Lola wanted money, attention, status. Ruth wanted nothing from him anymore. That scared him. As weeks passed, Ruth's work began to grow. People called her, they recommended her. Samuel noticed. "You seem busy these days," he said one evening. "I am," Ruth replied. "With what?" he asked. She smiled. "With my life." At the same time, Samuel's world began to shake. One deal failed, then another. He went to Lola to complain. She frowned. "So what are you saying? You don't have money now?" "I do," Samuel replied quickly. "Just not like before." Lola went quiet. "That's not what you told me when we met," she said coldly. "I don't like stress." That night, Samuel came home frustrated. Ruth was calm, focused, unbothered. For the first time in a long while, Samuel looked at his wife and realized something. She no longer needed him, and Lola only needed what he could give. That was when fear crept into his heart. Samuel's fall did not come with noise. It came with silence. One morning, he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. No missed calls, no messages. He sighed and stood up. Ruth was already dressed. "You are going out?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, picking up her bag. "To work?" She paused. "Yes." Samuel nodded slowly. At the office, things were worse. A meeting was postponed, another was cancelled. "Let's talk next month," a client said on the phone. Samuel dropped the phone on the table and rubbed his face. That evening, he went to see Lola. She looked irritated when she opened the door. "You look stressed," she said. "Things are not moving like before," Samuel admitted. Lola crossed her arms. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying things are tight right now." She laughed softly, not kindly. "When you had money, you were everywhere. Now you want me to manage." Samuel frowned. "I thought you cared." She shook her head. "I cared about the lifestyle." That was the last long conversation they had. After that, Lola stopped calling. Samuel returned home early that night. Ruth was in the living room, working quietly on her laptop. He stood there for a moment, unsure of himself. "Ruth," he said softly. "Yes?" She looked up. "I didn't know things would turn out like this," he said after a pause. She nodded calmly. "Neither did I." Silence filled the room. "I'm sorry," Samuel added, "for everything." Ruth studied his face for a moment. "Why now?" she asked gently. "Because you finally see?" Samuel swallowed. "I was wrong. I let money confuse me." She closed her laptop slowly. "I tried to talk to you when you were on top," she said. "You didn't listen." "I'm listening now," he said quickly. She gave a soft, sad smile. I know, but listening late doesn't erase the damage. Samuel's chest tightened. Can we fix this? He asked. Ruth stood up and walked away. Ruth did not rush her decision. She waited until she was sure. One evening, Samuel came home and found her sitting in the living room. Samuel, she said softly, sit down. We need to talk. He obeyed immediately. She folded her hands gently. I've thought about this for a long time, she began. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to shout. Samuel's heart started beating fast. I want us to separate, she said quietly. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air. Samuel stood up quickly. No, Ruth, please, we can still fix this. She shook her head slowly. I already fixed what was broken. It was me. He moved closer. I've changed, he said. I swear I have. I know, Ruth said gently, but I changed too. She stood up and walked to the window. When you had everything, she continued, I begged for respect. I begged to be seen. You didn't listen. She turned to face him. Now that you have lost everything, you want me to stay so you won't feel alone. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. That's not true, he whispered. Ruth smiled sadly. Even if it's not, she said, I can't unlearn the strength I found. She picked up a small bag she had packed earlier. I'm not living with anger, she said. I'm living with peace. Samuel sank into the chair. You won't even fight for us? He asked weakly. Ruth shook her head. I fought when it mattered, she said, quietly, for years. She walked to the door, then paused. I hope you heal, she added. I really do. And with that, she left. No shouting, no insults, no scene. Just silence. Days passed, then weeks. The house felt empty, too quiet. Samuel replayed everything in his mind. The small house, the prayers, the sacrifices. He finally understood. Ruth did not leave because of another man. She left because she learned to love herself when he forgot how to love her. Ruth moved on. She focused on her work. Her confidence grew. Her life became peaceful. Samuel stayed behind with regret. Not because he lost money, not because the side chick left, but because he lost the one woman who loved him before success changed him. And that regret was louder than any argument they never had. Sometimes, the people we hurt the most are the ones who leave quietly, and by the time we realize their value, they are already gone. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe, like, and share for more.